It's Maine Coast Life. I'm Austin Surratt. Throughout the night, the audience heard one phrase over and over again. But the repetition wasn't something that grew increasingly obnoxious, like a fire alarm going off. Instead, it was comforting, like the continuous crashing of waves against the shore. The phrase was, "I would not be the person I am today if it weren't for Kave." Geno's Rock Club in Portland hosted a screening of the documentary Downeast Hardcore, Stories from the Cave, back on August 8th. Created by local filmmaker Ricky Layton, the film details Kathy Finlay, a.k.a. Kathy Kave, who owned and operated a DIY, chem-free music venue in Bucksport, Maine between 2001 and 2016. It grew from a place to celebrate music to a home for disillusioned youth around the area. If you're unfamiliar with the story, we spoke with Layton about the film in advance of its premiere at the 2026 Maine International Film Festival. We'll provide a link to the story in the comments section of this video. So the night of the screening, the doors opened at 6 p.m., and the film screening itself started at 7 p.m. By the time I stepped foot at the venue at 7:01, not only had all the seats filled up in the concert room, but almost 24 people were standing at the entrance, back by the bar. The audience stood on their tiptoes or straddled the rungs on the bar stool. Even Kitty, the owner of Geno's, climbed on a step stool when she could afford time to peek over the patrons' heads to see what was happening on the screen. On the other side of the room, the pool table was covered in old flyers, posters, and tour shirts provided either by Kathy herself or some of the frequent flyers at the venue, affectionately known as Kave Kids. As one audience member pointed out during the Q&A session following the screening, there was a tour shirt from the Pennsylvania-based band Title Fight, where the dates covered shows at big cities like Philadelphia, San Diego, Houston, etc. But contrasted between the band's Montreal and Worcester, Massachusetts dates was Bucksport, an almost visual representation of the venue's black sheep identity. After browsing this DIY historical exhibit, I slumped into a bar stool, furiously browsing my email for an advanced screener's copy of the documentary that Layton had sent me. It took me a few minutes and several deep squats on my bar stool for any visual cues I could see over the audience. But I was finally able to sync the audio projecting over the house monitors with the video on my phone. The documentary focuses on Finlay's incredible relationship with the local Bucksport kids, even before any of them had even played a note at the Cave. Kathy, who worked as an occupational therapist at a local middle school, had gone out of her way to become familiar with hardcore music, driving kids, some of whom were as young as 10 and 11 years old at the time, to shows around coastal Maine, and filming everything with a large camera she always carried around with her. The footage in the documentary relies heavily on the archives taped on VHS, which really must have been a trip for anybody born after the turn of the millennium. The film's talking heads include Kave Kids, local and national hardcore acts that had performed there, and even Kathy herself. They cover everything from the cultural identity of Bucksport to the breakdown of hardcore music and mosh pit etiquette to the Cave's evolution as a popular touring spot for national acts like Agnostic Front, Slapshot, and Hatebreed. As the film goes on, some of the biggest pops belong to the locals recounting stories of the Cave. Each time a new person graced the screen at Geno's, a small yip shot out or a nostalgic laugh rumbled from the audience. Interestingly, in the documentary's third act, the talking heads analyze the frequency of turnover for Maine's music venues. But an unexpected swerve comes when Kathy mentions that in 2016, she was diagnosed with leukemia. With a 17% chance of survival, she had to close the Cave to focus on her health. Many of those interviewed in the film speak about how their fear for Kathy's life was the final chapter of the venue's history, and not a single person felt that the Cave closing was the true end of that era. It's one of the most remarkable twists conducted in a music documentary. Aside from the occasional drunken tourist loudly hollering about why a punk club was screening a movie on a Saturday night, the audience politely stared forward, refusing to miss a single second of the action. The energy mirrored an exhibit opening at the Maine Historical Society or the Portland Museum of Art, except with more beer and body piercings involved, I guess. After a brief intermission, Layton and Kathy took the stage for a Q&A session. On the high-top table between them sat two microphones and a jack-o'-lantern with a fake flame rippling out of its head. The Q&A was curated by Jessica Harvey, who served as a producer on Layton's film and was a Kave kid herself. Before opening the floor to the audience, Harvey pitched a couple of questions herself. She brought up that Kathy was one of the few women in the aughts putting on DIY shows and wondered what her thoughts were about that. Honestly, I hadn't thought much about that at the time, Kathy said. I was more focused on the kids and giving them a space to be who they are. The weight of her influence swelled once the audience started sharing stories about the Kave. Numerous fans asked for the mic and told hilarious stories about making pizza to feed the hungry fans and to add a little income into the venue's non-existent profit margin. They discussed the impeccable brownies that Kathy baked and brought to the shows, and the behind-the-scenes anecdotes about their favorite concerts, name-dropping some of the headliners they couldn't believe would come to a small town like Bucksport. But there were also touching moments, too. Members of bands past and present shared how an opportunity to perform at the Kave made it possible to tour in the United States and Europe. Others shared personal stories of their broken homes and how Kathy had become a second mother to them. Shockingly, no one cried, but it was also hard to tell for sure with everyone's face melting with sweat in the humid concert hall. The Q&A ceased, and Harvey asked the audience to help move chairs out of the general admission area before the bands took the stage. Like days of old, everyone jumped at a chance to help put the show on. Once the chairs were cleared and cigarettes were smoked, the event closed out with 3 bands, all products of the Kave: Corrective Measure, Dying Mind, and Mortar. Corrective Measure kicked off the show. Quite literally, there were kicks flying in the air as the band paid tribute to Kathy's influence on them. Several of the Kave kids made appearances on stage to perform with Corrective Measure, while lead singer Braden exercised his right to dance during his own band set. Next was Dying Mind, who brought a sludgier, black metal sound to the stage. The guttural vocals and crushing instrumentation vibed well with Geno's horror-themed interior decoration. The skeleton lording over the stage clouded the band and the audience in its arms, protecting them with a shield of metal and death. By the time of Mortar's set, the enthusiastic crowd was struggling to catch its breath. The audience, predominantly in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, had emotion and energy gushing out of them since the first few seconds of the movie. Mortar's singer called out to the audience with a plea that almost certainly had never been said in the Kave in its 15-year existence. "We know it's late, we know you're tired, and you've got to get up tomorrow," he barked. "But let's do this for the Kave." It's easy to forget that the Kave kids are adults now. They're married, working day jobs, raising families. At one point, I had to look over a little girl with giant pink headphones sitting at one of the bar tables so I could shoot footage of 5 sweaty men two-stepping as hard as they could in the pit in front of the stage. Admittedly, I stayed for the first Mortar song to take a quick video, and then I left. It was just after 11 p.m., way past my bedtime, and I also had to get up in the morning. But out of respect, I listened to their music in the car on the way home, mostly at a reasonable volume because, unfortunately, that's the person I am today also.